Okay, welcome to Dalewood Baptist Church. I'm so glad to see everybody that's made their way out tonight. I know, and I've been told that there are a lot of people watching at watch parties and all kinds of other stuff online. We welcome you too. Tonight's going to be a little different than what we typically do on Sunday night, but we want to redeem the time and make the time useful. So if you would you please make welcome Dr. Carl Werner.
Thank you so much, and it's great to be with you, and thank you, Pastor. And thanks, Rafe, for inviting me too. Just make note of this night. It's April 2025, because you are living history when a big theory goes down. It's very rare that you could live through a big story going down like, Galileo's time or Pasteur's time, but you are living it. And your kids and grandkids, 25 or 50 years from now, are going to ask you, Grandma, Grandpa, what was it like when people believed in evolution? And you'll say something like, well, back in 2025, all the museums believed in evolution, and they taught it, and all the public television taught it like it was fact. And the grandkids will say, ha, 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 and say, tell us more, Grandma or Grandpa. Well, then there was this guy came into Dalewood Baptist Church on 2025. We had never heard it, but he said the whole theory was overturned. And nobody else was saying it, but then the next year there was a couple more, there was next year's couple more. It didn't overturn that year. It took years and years and years. About 30 years later, look, nobody believes in evolution anymore. So you're living it. Remember it, put it down in your noggin. Yeah. So how did I get involved in this? I was 19 years old, and I was in college and in medical school. I was in one of those 6-year medical schools. I was in my second year of medical school, and a friend took me out to lunch, and he says, Carl, you believe in evolution. What about these 3 problems? And his questions were, how could the universe form out of nothing, since that would violate the laws of physics because matter doesn't form from nothing? And the second question was, how could life ever begin? Because you know, Carl, that DNA doesn't form spontaneously, so how could life form spontaneously? And his third point was, Carl, how could you believe in evolution? Because there's all these fossils. Back then, the conversation was 300 million. He says, but each fossil animal is separated. They're not like blended together like one animal changing into another. How can you believe that with this rich fossil record? His 3 questions, which took a minute and a half, were so profound to me as a science geek. I was like, he's right. I couldn't overcome those 3 questions. And I thought about it, and 6 months later, I became a Christian. But I didn't know what to do about all my other questions. What about dinosaurs? What about the millions of years? What about the fossil record? All these things. So I didn't know. For the next 18 years, then, I was a physician, and in my spare time, I'd read books on creation, evolution, geology, things like that. I didn't feel satisfied with the answers. So 27 years ago, I talked my wife into forming a television production company. And I said, Debbie, I want to get access to the fossils. I want to go out to these dig sites. And I told her it would be just a 2-year project, and it would only be 1 trip. And and then it took us 11 trips around the world, 300,000 miles, and it took us 27 years to finish it. And some wife is laughing, because you know how that goes. And during that time of filming, I never, ever, ever thought I would be able to say this following sentence. And I just was questioning evolution. I wanted to try to figure out how it could all fit together. And then last year, I realized the theory of evolution was overturned in 2024. That was last year. We're actually 1 year into this. And I was like, wow, that's hard to believe. Now, I don't expect you to believe until you hear my information. And you shouldn't take my word for it. You judge each one of these points. But see, evolution could be broken down into 9 points. You have to form the universe. That would be through the Big Bang. You'd have to form the life, like a bacteria, from chemicals. That's what evolution would teach. that the universe was formed 17 billion years ago, that life formed 4 billion years ago on Earth, and then from that bacteria you form the different animal groups, and then we have these mechanisms of evolution that work to teach how evolution worked, and then we have our 3 best proofs of evolution. And last year when I looked at this, I said, oh my gosh, I can disprove every one of these very strong. So I was like, I don't know what to do with this. I'm going to sound like a nutcase saying that the evolution was overturned, being the only person. But I was like, I had this moral obligation to speak it. You don't like it, so that, but it's like, this is the truth, so here we go. You judge as we go along through this. All 9 points have been overturned. According to me, you get to judge them one at a time. The first idea is that the universe formed naturally out of the Big Bang. And the evolution scientists teach this as fact. But when you go interview the evolution scientists, they say, no, there's problems galore with the Big Bang. And the Big Bang was overturned in 2003. It started with this PBS show called The Elegant Universe. And scientist after scientist after scientist got up on camera, and said, it doesn't work. It violates the laws of physics. Like this scientist, he says, how could you come up with the matter for the universe for the Big Bang if matter doesn't form from nothing? See, matter would be like hydrogen, helium, the atoms. He said, how could you form the universe from nothing, since matter can't come from nothing, nor can energy? And the next scientist that got up on that PBS show basically said the same thing, that the laws of physics don't work with the Big Bang. It's a disaster. And at the end of the show, they had a Nobel Prize winner in physics. I think it's 2003 he won the Nobel Prize, or 2004. And he said that the Big Bang doesn't work. Now, these are secular scientists at Berkeley, and they're not religious. They just say it doesn't work. And this is the most accepted idea of how the universe formed. And I could go through the reasons in more detail, but we don't have time for that. The following year, in 2004, this article came out in New Scientist, and basically, I'm just going to have to paraphrase this because I can't read it, but basically said the Big Bang is the most accepted theory of how the universe formed, and it doesn't work. And they say that it has so many fudge factors built in, what the astronomers view from their telescopes doesn't match the theory. And what the laws of physics that they know doesn't match the theory. There's things missing, like monopoles and antimatter and things like that. And so there's this total disconnect. And so this article in New Scientist was signed by 33 scientists. And they're from the largest institutions of the world. And basically, you could say there's nobody smarter in the world besides the Nobel Prize winner, but these guys are from Cambridge, Los Alamos National Laboratory, the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, Max Planck Institute for Astrophysics, et cetera, et cetera. 33 scientists, plus the ones on PBS, said it doesn't work and it's over. Wow. So, as an objective person, I have to put an X through that they have the origin of the universe figured out. They just told me it doesn't work, and that's their best theory. So that is the first pillar of evolution and naturalism to go down. The next pillar is this idea that after the Big Bang occurred 17 billion years ago, then the Earth was formed 4 billion years ago. I don't believe any of these dates, by the way. Then the Earth cooled off, and it was kind of a sterile environment, almost like the moon. There was an atmosphere, but it was just rocks and dust and simple molecules like methane gas, carbon dioxide, and water. There was nothing living on the Earth. And the evolution scientists said that we went from dead, everything's dead, nothing's living, rocks and dust, to a living thing, a cell, a microscopic first cell. But there's a problem. And when my friend confronted me with this, I was like, oh, he's right. The problem is that all living things, this is a bacteria, a picture of a bacteria that I drew, all living things like dogs, cats, your oak tree, the magnolia, and bacteria all have DNA, RNA, proteins, and enzymes. They're necessary components. There is no exception to this rule. You have to have all four. The problem is that DNA is what we call a macromolecule. And instead of having just 2 or 3 atoms like CO2 or CH4, it has thousands and thousands. And DNA never, ever forms from simple molecules. Never. That's a biochemical law. I mean, you ask any biochemisters. And so if DNA can't form, but it's necessary for life, how would you start life naturally without God? There is no way. And it's not just DNA. It's also proteins. Proteins are one of the 4 necessary components. They have thousands of atoms, like carbon, oxygen, sulfur, thousands of them. But the simple molecules, CO2, H2O, never, ever form proteins. There's no way. It's against the laws of biochemistry. So if the simple molecules can't make the necessary components, how would life ever begin? Impossible. It'd only have to be God making it or some other theory that nobody knows. And so as an objective scientist, my take on this is, what else am I to believe that life cannot begin naturally? Life being the first bacteria, the microscopic, under any circumstance. So now we're not doing very good if you believe in evolution. We can't form the universe. Now we can't form life. And the problems keep getting worse. And now we're going to move on to the next one. This next step here, the third one, is the origin of animal groups. They call them phyla. See, all animals on Earth could be described in 99% of animals would fit into these 7 groups: coral, sponges, vertebrates, the echinoderms, et cetera, et cetera. All animals fit in these 7 groups. But here's the problem. If you go to kind of like the Grand Canyon, go to the bottom layer, the animals in the bottom layer are these 7 animals. And the 7 animals are fully formed. It's not like the bacteria, which is microscopic, you can't see it. It's not like the bacteria evolved into the fish and you can see it in the fossil record. You have the bacteria, which is very tiny, and you have these big animals like the coral phyla on the coral on the right. That coral at the bottom layer is this big. The fish at the bottom layer is fully formed. The sponge is a fully formed sponge, and there's no evidence that they evolved. The evolution scientists recognize this problem. They call it the Cambrian explosion, because in the lowest layer of the Cambrian, the animals suddenly appear. But see, Darwin knew about this, and he explained it this way: we just don't have a good enough fossil record. That's why you can't see it. If we had more fossils of these soft things, and if we had fossils of bacteria, maybe we could see the bacteria changing into a fish or the bacteria changing into a sponge. But the fossil record's too poor. The problem is, in 2025, is that argument is gone. We have, how many fossils do you think the museums have in the museums? Total world count of fossils. Billion. It's 1 billion. 1 billion fossils have been found, and it's all the animals that are living today, we can see them as fossils. So we know the fossil records is fairly beautiful. It has the animals and plants, about 85% of them in the fossil record. But look what's in the fossil record. We have fossil bacteria. See, if you can have fossil bacteria, which are very hard to fossilize, you should be able to see a bacteria slowly changing into a fish. If you have fossil bacteria, you should see it going into the sponge. We have fossil fish eggs. You know, fish eggs, they're small, they're soft. They'd be very difficult to fossilize. But we have fossil fish eggs. We have fossil animal embryos. These are microscopic that you could only see under a microscope. They're 2 cells, 4 cells, 8 cells. They're soft. If we got fossil animal embryos, we should be able to see the intermediates between the bacteria and the next step, which is the full-form coral. We have fossil jellyfish. You wouldn't think a jellyfish would fossilize, would you? It's just jelly, more or less. And we have fossil worms, and they're difficult to fossilize. why are we saying that the fossil record's poor? Maybe the fossil record's correct, and this evolution of the animal groups just never occurred. We have fossil flowers, cattail head. I don't know if you've ever seen those. You know how soft those things are. We have those as fossils, and we even have, kids, don't laugh, alligator poop. Now, if there's something that's hard to fossilize, you wouldn't think alligator poop would fossilize because it's, how do you make that into a hard rock fossil? That would be very difficult, and yet we have all these soft things, all these microscopic things, and guess what? There is no connection between the bacteria, which is in the center of the screen here. You can't even see it, it's so small, and that coral, and that fish, and that sponge. We have bacteria, and we have corals, and nothing in between. Imagine the steps between that bacteria and the fish at the bottom in gray, black and white. The fish has fins, it has a mouth, an anus, intestinal tract, it has a vertebrae, it has a spinal cord, it has a heart, it has blood vessels. Now, the bacteria has none of that. So if the bacteria went into the fish, how many intermediate animals would that take of slow evolution over millions and millions of years? That would take thousands of intermediates. And to claim that the fossil record is poor just doesn't work because you have no animals between the bacteria and the fish. The fish just suddenly appear, almost like God created them. Wow. So, you know what? I have to, as an objective person, say, I can't believe this anymore, that the animal groups evolved from a bacteria. This just doesn't make sense. And you could believe it if there's only 10 fossils in the museums, but with 1 billion fossils, I can't believe that anymore. What else am I to believe? It's a fantasy world out there that somehow this is true. So the next step in this naturalism is that those 7 groups now have to evolve into everything above them. Let's just do one of the groups, the fish. That's the vertebrate groups. Vertebrates are animals with backbones. And evolution would say the fish evolved into an amphibian evolved into a reptile, the reptile evolved into a mammal, the mammal evolved into a monkey, and monkey evolved into man. That's the steps up the vertebrates. And the problem is PBS and the museums say this works, that we can see one animal group up the vertebrates changing into another. And I'll show you the examples here in just a second. But the reality is there's no intermediates, except for a few exceptions, and I'm going to show you they don't work. This professor in 1977, his name is Dr. Stephen Jay Gould, and he's an atheist, he's a Marxist, he's a socialist, and he's from Harvard University. Now, he is not a friend of creationism by any stretch of the imagination, and he's not a friend of Christians and creation. So what does he say about the fossil record in 1977? See, this has been known. All these steps that don't work have been known for dozens of years. This has been known for 50 years, that the fossil record offers no support for one animal in the vertebrate group changing into another. What? At the museums, we're told this on PBS, everything, that one animal slowly changes into another. But he says no. He says the fossil record offers no support for gradual change over time. And let me just read this to you. The extreme rarity of transitional forms in the fossil record persists as a trade secret in paleontology. Now, why would that be a trade secret? Shouldn't that be something that we should all know if the fossils don't show one animal changing into another? Why would that be a trade secret unless they're trying to oppress Christianity? Why would they not tell everybody that goes in the museum that we think this, but it doesn't work, but, we'll still believe it as an evolutionist? He says the fossil record offers no support. New species always appear suddenly in the fossil record with no intermediate links to ancestors in the older rock layers of the same region. Now, I'm going to put some meat on this and show you what he's talking about, because this is incredible. These are pictures of fossil bats. My lovely wife, Debbie, in the back, took these pictures at one of the museums in Germany, well, multiple museums, and you'll see the fossil bat record is incredibly rich and beautiful. Look you can see the ears, you can see their wing membrane, you can even see what they ate for lunch. And and it was a bug, And here's the problem, is the fossil record is rich. There's 1,000 fossil bats, but there's no evidence of bats evolving in the fossil record. Here we go. Evolution scientists believe a little mouse-like animal called a tree shrew evolved into a bat. And we have 1,000 fossil bats, and we have fossil tree shrews, but the animals between the tree shrew slowly changing into a bat are missing, absent. They don't show evolution. Now, if a tree shrew with short front arms evolves into a bat with long arms, the middle animal, when he's evolving, should have like a tree shrew with long arms. And an animal further evolved should be a tree shrew with long arms, and he's just starting to get his wings. And the first animal would be a tree shrew, but his back legs are getting smaller, things like that. But these animals between the tree shrew and the bat, animals A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. I'll tell you how many they found of them. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. That's impossible. Statistically, that's impossible that we would accept that. It's impossible with a good fossil record. Now, if you only had one fossil bat and it was just a bat bone, one bat bone, you could say, well, we just don't know, we believe it. But you can't believe it anymore when the fossil record is so rich for bats and you have no fossil ancestors. See, and I'm just getting started for the vertebrates. We're going to do what he talked about, this trade secret. And I don't understand why this is a trade secret. Here is a segment from our show that Debbie's selling back there. This is, by the way, she's also the camera woman when we're filming these interviews. Just a quick clip here. Could you turn up audio on the video, boys? I don't know if you get audio. You know what? It's not important, Pastor. It's really not important. That's the only one that has audio, and we'll just skip the audio. But anyway, we interviewed these top world experts. You know, some people say, well, my son is a lawyer, and he's really rich and successful. And other people say, well, my son is a doctor. And what is your son? Well, my son goes around the world interviewing bat evolution experts. And I was like, thank you, Mom. I'm glad you recognize, that's what I did, And so I think I just lost my audio. So these bat evolution experts say on screen, on the video, you can turn it up a little more.
There are certain people that think they were specially created, or they actually are kind of a problem with the creationists who like, if things were created, here's a very highly complex mammal with all these adaptations, and bingo, they just show up at some particular moment in time, fully formed as a bat. Obviously, evolutionary biologists and paleontologists don't believe that, but at this point, we don't have a good fossil ancestor for them.
Whereas also that must have happened also in the lowest tertiary, but we have no evidence for this evolution. Also, the bats appear perfectly developed.
We don't have any non-flying bats, and so we can't pull something out of that, any kind of information out of that that tells us how they might have evolved.
What period of time did the bats evolve, do we think?
We have no fossil records of bats during the Cretaceous period. And this means that we are only depending on speculation when it started and what happened in that time. Of course, when we have
See, now we're doing this trade secret that there's no animals connecting the ground animal to the bat. And let's go on to the next animal. Next animal is called a pterosaur or pterodactyl. It's extinct. You know, you see these on different movies. They're a reptile, but they fly, or they flew. And they have collected 1,000 pterosaurs, complete, beautiful specimens. We photographed them all over the world. And yet, even though we have 1,000 pterosaurs, the experts, and every expert on this show today is all evolution scientists. These aren't creationists. They say there's 1,000 fossil bats, and the next expert says there's no ancestors showing evolution. And that's bats, that's flying reptiles, and in other words, the ground lizard, you don't find the intermediate animals between a ground lizard and the flying reptile. The animals A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H are missing. Even though its arms should be getting longer, we should see all those animals in the fossil record. You should see them getting wing membranes. Nothing? Why did we believe this? The next one is fish. I'm doing the vertebrates. I'm working my way up the vertebrates. Do you know how many fossil fish they have found? 500,000. And look at these pictures that Debbie took. And we took these pictures all over the world. These fish are perfect. They're beautiful, all different types, even like a bluegill on the bottom right here, or a gar on the bottom left. With 500,000 fish, you would think with that rich of a fossil record that you should see fish evolution. I mean, wouldn't it make sense that you should see these steps, right? But we interviewed the fish evolution expert of the world, and he says that the fish on the black and white fish up the top left, I showed you before, that just suddenly appeared, there's no connection between that fish and all the other fishes. We have sharks, we have bony fish, we have lampreys, but you cannot connect any fish group. They just are all separate. There's no evolution. Now, the no evolution is the dots, because the dots represent no fossils. The solid lines represent fossils. And you can't argue that it's a poor fossil record with 500,000 fossils collected, and they know where billions more fish are. They just don't collect them. There's no point in collecting any more same fish. Same with the dinosaurs. 100,000 dinosaurs have been collected, and yet when we interviewed the evolution expert for dinosaur evolution, Dave Weissample, who wrote the book, The Dinosauria, he says that there are no ancestors to any dinosaur species. The T-Rex just show up. The Triceratops just show up. There's no ancestor to any dinosaur species. This is crazy. Why are they teaching that dinosaurs evolved from one another when they'd have no connections between those? So, to be honest, what else am I to believe than to put an X through this, that the animals within the phyla, like the vertebrates, I can't believe that that's real, because every expert says it's not, except for a few exceptions. I'm going to tell you about those in a second. But 99.9% of the vertebrates, they don't connect. It's not evolution. It's creation and the flood is what it is, but I don't want to spoil it for you. So the next big dot here is the mechanisms of evolution. And we're all told that evolution works. And we've been told this, but it doesn't work. And I'll tell you why. There's been 3 ideas about how evolution worked. Darwin thought animals adapted, and that's how they changed. Believe it or not, Darwin thought that if you lifted weights and got big biceps, like your speaker, and then... Don't be laughing. Big biceps. That Darwin thought that your baby, if Debbie and I had a baby, God help us, if Debbie and I had a baby, that because I lifted weights and have big muscles, my baby would be born with large muscles. That's true. You can read it in The Origin of Species. He was talking about horses and exercising horses. They'd be born with large muscles, their offspring, if you had a very well-developed horse. Darwin would think this, that if you adapted and were out in the sun and got a suntan, and yes, you've adapted because your skin changed color. That's the adaptation. But he thought you would pass it on to the next generation, and that your baby, when you got pregnant with your suntan, your baby would be born with a suntan. See, that's so silly. Now, you know it's silly. I'm going to tell you the scientific reason why it's silly. We have body cells, and then we have reproductive cells. The body cells like arm cells, nose cells, hair, no, I don't have the ear cells. Those are body cells. But the reproductive cells, for the women, they're called eggs, ovum. For the men, they're called sperm. It's the reproductive cell. There is no connection between your skin that you suntan. It doesn't signal your ovum or sperm, the DNA. It doesn't change the DNA in the reproductive cells. So no matter what you do with weights and lift weights, your DNA is not going to change. And this is why, yes, you can adapt. And of course, we all adapt, but you can't pass that on to the next generation, and you can't evolve that way. So that's been totally disproved 100 years ago. The second mechanism is that Darwin says is that natural selection was a way that you could create evolution. But the problem is with natural selection is natural selection only removes traits. It doesn't create new traits. Like as a dog breeder, you could take 2 mutts and breed them, and you could remove the traits for a tall dog and get down to a Chihuahua. And same with natural selection. You could take 2 birds and get them down to a smaller beak. But you're just removing the bigger beak. You can't add new body parts. For example, as a dog breeder, you cannot take 2 dogs and keep reproducing with them and trying to get a dog with horns or antlers or a whale's tail, right? Am I right? You can't do that. That's silly. But Darwin thought it did work that way, that you could select traits and create traits, but you can't. Breeding or natural selection, artificial selection, only removes traits. Well, how does evolution work? Evolution works this way, and this is impossible. Evolution says that you have 1 trillion cells in your body. And let's say you're a chimp and you're going to evolve into a human. You have 1 trillion cells. And in each of your 1 trillion cells on the chimp, you have 3 billion letters of DNA. Now do the math with me. Think about this. So in order to get a new gene, like a new trait, from this chimp that's going to evolve into a human, you have to create 300 letters in a row on the DNA. The problem is this. You don't know where to mutate. So you get mutations like if you go over to a nuclear power plant and get exposed, or if you drink some Roundup or something like that, you get mutations. But what cell is it going to mutate? It's random. It could be this cell, or it could be this cell. So you have to have 1 trillion mutations, 1 trillion mutations before you get the mutation in the correct cell, which is the ovum or sperm. That gets you nowhere because you still have to get it in the right location on the 3 billion letters in that cell. And if you get it in the wrong cell, wrong place on the DNA, you have to start over. Okay, let's get another 1 trillion cells to mutate and see if we mutate in the right location on that DNA. It doesn't work. And so the chance of evolving a new gene is 1 over, not 1 over 2, not 1 over 5, not 1 over 10. It's 1 over 1 trillion billion, 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 and come back in 5 minutes. And a trillion billion. So that's the chance, and that's statistically impossible. And that's just for 1 gene. You have to do it multiple genes. You have to do 10,000 new genes to go from a chimp to a human. So this is impossible if you just actually think it through. And so what am I to think as an honest person? This doesn't work. Why do I believe that any of the mechanisms of evolution happen? So if you're an evolutionist, and I pray to God there's evolutionists here, please don't be offended, come talk to me afterwards, but you're not starting out well. You can't form the universe. We just talked about that. You can't form life. We talked about that. You can't form the 7 animal groups from the bacteria. You can't form the animals within the groups. You don't even have a mechanism for evolution. So you could say evolution is over. But no. Evolutionist scientists, if I had a professor right here, Carl, you are holding back the best information, the best proofs of evolution we have, which is that the walking whales, which is that a whale evolved from a land animal like a dog or a deer or something like that. We have the dinosaurs evolving into birds, and we have apes evolving into humans. Carl, you have withheld those three best proofs of evolution, and so you're making this false case that evolution doesn't work. And that would be a good rebuttal to me. But it just so happened that Debbie and I traveled around the world and we interviewed the experts in these three areas. I can't believe we accomplished this. And it is a stunning revelation. What I'm going to tell you, with the BS, I don't know what you call it, BS up here. I don't know what they call it in North Carolina. I had someone tell me, don't talk those cuss words, I said, okay. Especially at a Baptist church, Baptists don't cuss. But anyway, so the first scientists that we interviewed, this is the idea of a whale evolving from a dog or a deer or whatever the latest animal they think evolved into a whale. And this scientist, Phil Gingrich, got his fossil on the cover of Science magazine, quite prestigious, because he found this walking whale, and it's a whale, but it has 4 legs, okay? And you could see that it was a land animal, but now it's in the sea, and now its eyes are down on the side of the head like a whale, not on top like a dog. Its nose is not like the tip of the nostril like in dogs, but it's up on top like a blowhole. And he said, I found the missing link, and he became famous overnight. We went to interview him, and we asked to see the fossils of this animal. And this is what he found. I'm not kidding you. This is the fossil that he found, and it's the fossil in gray charcoal. He had a little piece of the back of the skull and a little piece of the jaw, and he made up that animal from that small fossil fragment. Whoa, really? And then it all hit the fan, because 18 years later, they found the animal in full form. And here is what it really was. Its eyes are on the top of the head like a dog. It's a land animal, the animal on the right, on your right. That's what Pakicetus actually looks like. It doesn't have a blowhole. It has a nostril at the end of the nose. It doesn't have flippers, and it doesn't have a whale's ear. He made the whole thing up out of conjecture, the whole thing. Now, you have to understand, right now we're in this phase of this discussion. We're on the best proof of evolution. This is not just a proof, because everything else doesn't work. These are the 3 best proof of evolution. And this is an embarrassment. Not to be outdone, his colleague at the same university, University of Michigan, Dr. Hans Thewissen, he says, well, I found a walking whale too, because he was probably jealous that the first guy found one, got all that attention. So he says, I found this one's called Ambulocetus. And there he is, we're filming the interview. He has the skeleton out in front of him. And I said, could I photograph the skeleton? The skeleton's on the left, it's orange. And then I would ask if I could put the skeleton over his diagram. Now, you kind of have a sick feeling about this. He took this skeleton and made this museum display of that same animal called Ambulocetus. It's beautiful, but it's fake. This thing hangs in the museums all over the world. It's fake, and I'll tell you why it's fake. Oh, shoot. There he is. And you could see the blowhole. Well, you can't really see it, and I don't have a pointer, but there's a blowhole about 4 inches back. You can't quite see it, but the next picture will show it to you. Now, he's saying this is a walking whale, too. It has 4 legs, and it has a blowhole and a whale's ear. The problem is, you see the blowhole there on the top of his recreated diagram? And see, even at the Smithsonian, they show the blowhole. It's not at the tip, it's on top, and he has a whale's ear. And then we took his fossils. This all took 3 hours to disprove this whole thing is BS. And we took his fossils on the left, and we put them on top of the skeleton that was hanging. We put the skeleton hanging, changed it to black and white so you could see the difference. And we put his fossils on top of it, and you can see that he has no fossil of the blowhole. That's where he didn't have fossils. That's where he made it up. And I asked him about that on camera, and he says, I really don't think it has a blowhole. I said, that's why you're famous. And then could I see the whale's ear? And he showed it to me, and he compared it to whale's ears and land animals' ears. He said, it really doesn't look like a whale's ear. This is the best proof you guys are telling us at the museums currently, and I'm not done. We go back and do another interview on the first partner. And he found another walking whale, and this one is called Rhodocetus. And there it is in the diagram at the museum. It's a walking whale. It's a whale because of the ear, and it has flippers in front, flippers in back, and a whale's tail. You see that? Rhodocetus. We interviewed him, and we said, could we photograph the fossils, the originals? Yeah, here they are. Can I lay them on top of the diagram? And I don't know if you can see that, but the bones are laying on there, and where the tail is, there is no bones. And I said, well, you don't have any bones of the tail. How do you know it has a whale's tail? You know, the whale's tail has that fluke that goes out like this. How do you know that it has a fluke? He said, well, I really don't know. You know, I don't think it has a fluke. I'm like, are you kidding me? Why are you even saying all this on public television and all this, and National Geographic? And then I said, and your hand, the flippers in front, do you have any bones for the flippers? No, I don't have any bones. And actually, I don't really think it has flippers. That took me 3 hours of interviewing. So, if that's your best proof for whale evolution, those three animals, what else am I to believe? I say that's not a good proof. I say that's not enough to make me believe in evolution. But Carl, you're leaving out the next best fossil proof. And we all believe in evolution based on this one. And this is that birds, like this bird on the right, evolved from a dinosaur. Now, this bird is the lowest bird in the fossil record. We filmed there in Germany. It's called Archaeopteryx. It's in the Jurassic layer. And so this bird appears suddenly in the fossil record, and there is no dinosaur before it. In other words, the layers below it. There's no dinosaur that you could say this evolved into this bird called Archaeopteryx. And this is true today. You can go to Wikipedia and they say, oh, it's true, it's true, it's true. But they never name a dinosaur in these layers below. I don't believe these dates, but Archaeopteryx is supposed to be 150 million years old. Then let's go to 155, 160, 100, 200 million years old. Okay, what dinosaur was it that evolved into birds? What specific dinosaur? We don't know. 195, what dinosaur evolved into birds? We don't know. At 180, do you have a dinosaur that's half dinosaur, half feathers, kind of getting smaller? We have nothing. The first animal is the fully formed bird. And we don't know what dinosaur it came from. We don't have any of the animals A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H. None. Well, that looks like everything else, that there's no connection between the animals. Why would you ever believe this? That's the first disproof of this idea that birds evolved from a dinosaur. The second proof is that the curator at the Smithsonian, he says birds did not evolve from dinosaurs. Even though every museum's teaching it, every PBS show is showing it, he said the idea of birds evolving from a dinosaur is a hoax. He said it's fantasia. He says it's propaganda. The third proof that this doesn't work is, do you remember the movie Jurassic Park 1? My favorite movie. And these two kids, the boy and the girl, the 13-year-olds are getting chased through the stainless steel kitchen. Does everybody remember that? Oh my gosh, the breath on the window and all that. And those two dinosaurs on the left at Jurassic Park were velociraptors. You remember what they look like. They're about a ton. They're about 20 feet long. They have scales, scaly skin. And evolution scientists between that movie and now are putting bird feathers on that dinosaur. They're putting bird feathers. And here at this museum on the right, it's the velociraptor, same animal, now has bird feathers. And guess what? The museum small print says we've never found a feather for this dinosaur. We never found a skin impression with feathers. We just believe it has it. Really? So you're putting feathers on dinosaurs, and you're also, I'll shorten this, but they're also putting scales on birds, fossil birds that they never found, and saying the birds look reptilian. So that's very disturbing. And the next proof against birds evolving from dinosaurs was this fantastic story in National Geographic. This fossil was, and I think it's 1999, it's called Archaeoraptor lionensis. Now, we interviewed the scientists that were involved in this. They did a CAT scan on this fossil, and this fossil is supposed to be half bird, half dinosaur. Actually, it's a fake. It was made up. It is a dinosaur tail and a bird's body glued together. And you watched episode 1 in our series out there. We interviewed the guy who did the CAT scan. They did a CAT scan on this fossil 2 or 3 months before it got published. And the CAT scanner, Dr. Tim Rowe, told everybody involved in the story, hey boys, this is a problem fossil. This is 5 different animals and a whole bunch of series of rocks that have been mortared together, and you just can't see it because you don't have the CAT scan. But if you look at the CAT scan and compare it to the real fossil, you can see these different animals. Now, the only reason I'm telling you this story is to show you the mindset of the evolution scientists who are destroying your families, telling your kids that this all works. This is the mindset. What would you do if you were the scientist from National Geographic? What would you do if you were the publisher for National Geographic? You would pull that story and say, goodbye, that's the end of that story. No. 2 months later, after he told them it was a fake, National Geographic holds a press conference and says it's real, and they found this intermediate link, and then they publish this the following month. So you know this is fraudulent, and okay, well, I think I understand who you guys are now. Hold on. Connection lost. I'm going to hit play again. Pastor told me this could happen. There we go. Oh, good. Same slide. And the slides are black. Oh, very good. There we go. So the next problem is that BBC then went to China where this fossil was created. And they say, this is kind of an interesting story. Let's go check out how this thing got created, who created it. And in this show called The Dinosaur That Fooled the World, BBC found that in this town, or this province in China, Liaoning, that there is an industry of fakery. Well, they'll say, you go into the shop and say, what you want? Well, you want a flying bird, flying dinosaur, you want walking whale? And they then take parts and they put them together, they martyr them, and you can't tell them that they're fake. And I've been fooled 3 times on these. And so guess what? A lot of their evidence for bird evolution comes from Liaoning, China. Let's see if I can make this puppy work. Oops. But anyway, most of the fossils they found are from Liaoning, but they're from the wrong rock layer. We still have connection problems here. They're from the wrong rock layer. And so the next problem is that feathered dinosaurs, there it is from Liaoning. And just hold on just a second until I get connected up here, folks. As the music director said, we have small technical difficulties. Pastor, I'm going to hand this to you and see if you can. Oh, there it goes. Maybe I'm supposed to be cool and walk with this thing with me. The next problem is if birds evolved from dinosaurs, why do they find modern birds with dinosaurs? So there are multiple problems with this, and that is their best proof for evolution. Millions of animals, this is their best, and it's a total disaster. Whales was a disaster. That's the bottom left. Birds evolving from dinosaurs was a disaster. And now I'm going to go on to the final disaster, and this is that humans evolved from apes. This all came out in 2024. The world does not know this yet. It's in our 2 books and the 6 last episodes of our video. Debbie and I, this is what we discovered after we interviewed these 40 world experts on human evolution. We documented 150 frauds in human evolution. Not one fraud. And I'm not talking mistakes. I'm saying actual documentable frauds. I don't want to get sued. I wouldn't use that word saying this scientist did fraud, this scientist did fraud. But the problem is that these scientists have done multiple frauds in this idea that humans evolved from apes. For example, we interviewed the scientists that made this diagram. Who's ever seen a diagram like this? Oh yeah, this is complete bull. Let me just tell you, if it is, and if you've ever believed it, it's bull. It's bull. And I'll tell you why. The ones that are fraudulent of the 14 animals are an X. And you couldn't know this unless you did these interviews. And who here has time to go around the world to do these interviews? The first 5 animals, when he put those first 5 animals in there, he knew they weren't related to humans, that they weren't evolving into humans. But he put them in his chart called The Road to Homo sapiens anyway. He knew it. I can document that for you. I'm so sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Okay. I've lost more church attendees that way. The last 5 animals in that chart, guess what? Guess what they are? They're Homo sapiens. No, wait, this is supposed to be the road to Homo sapiens. How is it possible you could put 6 Homo sapiens in the end of your chart? Are you like trying to make ape man? Yes. I mean, they didn't say it to my face. See, they took 6 Homo sapiens and put them in the chart. The first 5 aren't related. The last 6 are all Homo sapiens. And the middle 3, they're fraudulent. And I can tell you why. 2 of them, they doubled the brain size. One guy admitted, basically, he said this at the end of his life. He says, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. That's Dr. Raymond Dart, who came up with the Australopithecine. So there's so many frauds, and the frauds involve these ape men. It's the common ape men: Lucy, Neanderthal man, Turkana boy, Australopithecus prometheus, Tong child, Homo habilis. And here are the perpetrators of the frauds. This is devastating. By the way, this is their best proof. Why would you need to do one fraud? If it's true, you should be able to find ape men. You wouldn't need to make up stuff. And this list of the perpetrators of the frauds is like a who's who in National Geographic. The second problem Debbie and I documented is that many scientists do not allow other scientists who are pro-evolution to see their fossils. Now, why wouldn't you want another evolution scientist to see your wonderful ape-man fossil that you're going around the world telling about? Can someone come up with an answer to that, why you wouldn't want your evolution scientist to come and be able to see the fossils? Any ideas? Yes. That they're fake, or they're not ape-men. And so they know it in the bottom of their heart, so they don't allow other evolution scientists to see that. Thank you. And so that's not one fossil. That's fossil after fossil after fossil, and it's been going on since 1896. Like Java Man, Eugene Du Bois, the first one, he hides it for 24 years, all the time from 1896 to 1920. He hid it for 24 years. All the while, during those 24 years, he's going around the world to the World's Fair saying, I found the ape man, the missing link. He was hiding the fossils under the floorboard of his kitchen. And scientists were saying, why can't we see him? I just won't. Same with Piltdown man. Same with Neanderthal man. Same with Toomai. Same with Naladi. Same with Sediba. The scientists do not want you to spoil their party of fame and money. Now, after they die, and that's when I got in to see the fossils, because they wouldn't let me see the current ones. But once they die, yeah, you can look at these fossils. The next scientist lets you, and you can see that they're fakes. The third problem with ape men is that 237 times, hey, Pastor, I like this walking around the iPad. I'll keep everybody awake. I like that. Plus, I have better connectivity. 237 times, the scientist said, we found an ape man, and it's this. It's Tetrapothomo argentinus, like that would be one of them. 237 of these, and it turned out to be not an ape man, because years later, they came along and said Tetrapothomo argentinus was actually a raccoon leg bone. That's a true story. Or we found this one, Orsi man, and what did it actually turn out to be? A donkey skull. And we found this one, Homo capensis. What did it turn out to be? A recently buried human, less than 100 years old, you know, just like your grandma, or God bless her soul. Someone dug up your grandma and said, oh no, it's not grandma, and it's not a Homo sapiens. This is the missing link, and its name is Homo capensis. They did this 237 times. We documented this in volume 4 out here, and here's the list, and you can go through to see what did they turn out to be. The fourth problem with human evolution, see, I'm tearing down the last stronghold of evolution, because once human evolution goes down, you just saw the other 8 bullet points, they've all been collapsed, right? There's nothing left holding this thing up, except the ape-man belief. They're still believing in that ape-man chart that I showed you. But I'm taking down the last stronghold. 42,000 times these evolution scientists pulled out ordinary rocks out of the ground and said, no, this is not an ordinary rock. This is an ape-man stone tool. Then later, 42,000 times, someone said, that's just an ordinary rock. The evolution scientists took it down. Like these on the left. No, that's a scraper. That's a pounder. That's an anvil. No, those are ordinary rocks. Like the ones on the right. Oh, that's an axe, or that's a hand axe. No, that's a stalactite. Besides those, and this is my favorite, hundreds of times they said they found an ape-man a bone tool. And this has been done on TV, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I found the ape-man bone tool. Now, this next picture I'm going to show you is their picture. This is not my diagram. It's out of his book. See, this is Raymond Dart. He's famous. And he said he found 200 bone tools. He says, I found an ape-man saw. And then later, the evolution scientists, that's not an ape-man saw, that's an antelope jaw that you think was a saw. And he said, no, I found this ape-man scrub brush, and here's his drawings. The ape-man didn't have scrub brushes, and that's an antelope jaw, upper jaw. And I found an ape-man pickaxe. The next problem with human evolution, that thousands and thousands and thousands of times, they said they found an ape-man, and it turns out it's not what date they said it was. Like, for example, let's do Nebraska Man. That was the pig tooth guy. When it first came out, they said it was 1 million years old. Then, a few months later, a new article came out. No, it's 2 million years old. I can't quite read this, but I'm going to do it from memory. And then another year comes by, and they said, no, it's 3 million years old. And then the next year, it's 4 million years old. And then finally, it's 6 million years old. Nearly every ape-man has a changing dates for their thing. And, you only get one. Only one's right. You can't keep changing it. And thousands of these examples exist where the dates are unreliable. The seventh problem with human evolution is that most ape-men currently at the museums today are just fragments and incomplete. And you can make up your belief into anything you want. Like, here's Homo habilis. This is the best Homo habilis they have. Well, you could make that up into anything, right? If you believed it was a monkey, you could make it into a monkey. If you believed it was a human, if you believed it was an ape-man, just have at it. But that's not good evidence. This is Orion. Oh, this is an ape-man. Oh, really? How can you see that? Well, I sensed this guy could walk upright, and he used stone tools. And here's Ardipithecus. You can see the real fossils are in orange. The gray is just what he thinks. And see, this is unreliable evidence. So the current ape-men on display today, 90% of them are one of these three categories. They're either fraud-based, and I can show you the 150 frauds, and you can see the frauds in episodes 5 through 8 out there, or they're fragmentary, like I just showed you, or they're inaccessible. I can't tell you how many times we flew 18 hours for an interview with these guys, get off the plane with all arranged, and, okay, thanks for the interview. Can we photograph your fossils now? No. You are not, I just flew 18 hours to South Africa, and you're not going to let me see the fossil, but you'll tell me about it and promote it? No, you cannot see it. And that's a personal observation, and you would not have that observation unless you tried to film these. And the human evolution scientists will tell you behind, off camera, that they can't see their other colleagues' fossils. So if this is the best proof for evolution, and everything hung on it, we had nothing else, if this is it, what am I to believe? Do I believe in human evolution just because some authority says it? I'm so skeptical. I'm like Thomas. Unless I could put my finger in the side, I'm not going to believe it. And I do not believe that they showed me enough evidence of ape men. I don't believe it. And I've seen so many fossils, and I've talked to so many experts. I don't think they have the evidence. So because they have nothing, and all this was finally disproved in 2024 when our last 3 books came out, the theory of human evolution, the theory of evolution, the theory of naturalism, the theory that everything came about naturally, it's unsubstantiated. It doesn't work. And if you want to stand up and ask me questions why the Big Bang works, I'll answer some of those questions or one of these topics. But it doesn't work. And it's not like it kind of works. No, this doesn't work. All the steps do not work. So I'm going to be the fool and be the first one to stand up and say, hey guys, it's over. And we should now be standing up and running around this church and do a hula hula dance. And, like we are the Pentecostals now because evolution just went down, and this is going to be the end of the devastation to our families that has been going on for 150 years. When you send your kids to grade school, high school, and college, and the professors who are very cunning are going to tell your kids that it's all true, your kids won't be able to stand up to it unless they go through our 4-semester curriculum. Your kids won't be able to know through what's wrong with their arguments. And so it's over. Now, this was a waste of my time to come and tell you I found this if I don't transfer this somehow from me to you. Because I don't want it to die with me. This has to now go you, where you found this out, and then you are now going to take it to the others. That's your kids, your grandkids, your brothers, your sisters, your neighbors, and say, there's problems with evolution. No, evolution was disproved in 2024. If you don't believe it, watch this video. Dr. Werner, I can give you a link where you can see this show. It's past tense, and we should all be teaching everything. Now, I want you to learn this. And if you're a reader, I want you to go through the 4 books. Now, these books are very dangerous, and I'll tell you why. The Green Book, when kids receive this book, it's like starts with 6th, 7th grade. When 7th graders get this book and their teacher hands it to them, story after story, they stay up all night reading it, cover to cover. That's how good it is. It's so interesting of a book. So if a 7th grader can love it and absorb it, you can, and it's all these photographs, 900 photographs in it. So if you're a reader, go through these books. They take about 3 hours to read. You can do that over 3 or 4 months. If you don't like to read, like me, I don't like to read, except science books, then watch the videos. And it's an 8 episodes of videos, and these are high quality. They've been shown on multiple networks, like TBN and like that. And watch the 8 episodes and go through it. And by the way, the last 4 episodes goes through the 150 frauds one at a time. 1, fraud 2, fraud 3, fraud 4. And you make up your own decision if you think that I made the case for the fraud. And if you don't have a DVD player, which is everybody under age 40 here, then you can actually do the new technology and stream this on your phone and watch it at the airport when you're between flights or whatever. So you can stream this on your phone or your computer, and we can sell you the streaming pass tonight if you want to do that. We take MasterCard. Now, I want to point something out. Debbie and I don't make any money on this. This is not a hawk job. Like, hey, Debbie, let's go spend millions of dollars and we'll sell 30,000 books. It doesn't sound like a good business plan, No, we make no money. We've never made enough to pay for a hamburger. Our costs are much more than we will ever get back. So please don't think, oh, now here comes a hard sell at the church. Everybody pitch in now. Let's give some money to Dr. Werner, Get out your mortgages and sign them over to Dr. Werner. Help pay for this project. No. And the last thing, and this is my biggest thing, I beg you to teach us to your kids and grandkids. We've had 18,000 students over the years take these courses. And what it's intended for is you start with book 1, then the next semester it's book 2, next semester book 3, book 4. There's nothing to figure out. It's just turnkey. You just teacher, you learn it, you read the page to the students. Okay, here's your workbook. Fill out the workbook, come back, we'll do a quiz. There's no work. It's all been done. You could do this actually as a small group in your church. I'm not trying to upset the cart here. You guys probably already have your own agenda, but it could be done in small groups. It could be done in your Christian school. It could be done in your home school. You could get your public school to do it, because in these books, the word G-O-D is not mentioned, other than to say that we don't mention G-O-D in this book series, because I think the science should stand on its own. I don't think you need to preach if it's a scientific fact. If evolution doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. So that's why we did it that way. So I want to thank you for coming out. I know the weather was beautiful. It was a beautiful night. But what were you doing, Granny, when this thing all collapsed? What was it like? Well, this bald guy came into Delwood Baptist Church, and he said, even though PBS and every museum in the world said evolution was true, he said it was overturned. I didn't know what to make of me. Sound kind of plausible, but it took 35 years after I was at that lecture in 2025. It wasn't until 2060 that the whole world then kicked the whole theory off the table. You know, Max Planck, who won the Nobel Prize in physics in 1918, said this is how science progresses. Now, he found a new theory and it worked for physics. And he says, when you find a new answer, a new theory, a new, something like that, don't expect the world to embrace it. Now, he's a secularist. And he said, don't expect your colleagues to embrace the new theory. He says, science progresses one funeral at a time. Funeral, By the way, your car out there looks like a hearse. That black car out there looks like a hearse. But anyway, science progresses one funeral at a time. In other words, Max Planck, when he told his colleagues about his new idea on physics, they said, no, you're wrong, Max. And he said, until they died off, all his colleagues who had already hard set opinions, and the younger ones, I saw younger ones here, when they hear the information, they're not bought into evolution or any other theory, they listen with open minds, then these die off and these ones raised up, they will see the clearness of this argument and they will usher in the next, big science. But you're living it. This is like Galileo. You remember what happened to Galileo, by the way, when he said that the earth wasn't the center of the universe. Yeah, it didn't go good for him. He gets thrown in jail by the Catholic Church and he's under house arrest. And so, nobody's going to embrace me, but the process has started. I don't see any workaround on this. I can't imagine it ever ending. So, welcome to the new world. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Warner. As he talked and as I listened, two scriptures come to my mind. Why would we have been told a lie for so long? And I believe the Bible answers that. We don't fight against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities, rulers of darkness, and high places. Listen, folks, there is an organized attack on God that didn't begin yesterday. It began thousands of years ago to destroy the things of God. What's the best way to destroy God? In the beginning, God created. You've got to, in order to destroy God, you've got to destroy the creative power of God. And in 2024, announced in 2025 by Dr. Carl Werner, their best plan has been destroyed. And listen, you need to understand something. Dr. Werner is not somebody we've just plucked off the street. This is the creation expert in the world today. And we thank God that we've had the opportunity to have you here. And we're going to pray for you, and we're going to keep you in our prayers. Preacher, what do you think? What do you think we should do? Well, I'm going to give you an age-old God principle. Teach your children. Teach your children the truth. Cause your children to be inquisitive. Ask the questions. How could this possibly be? The reward is your children's future. Amen. Stand with me. We'll go to the Lord and pray. In prayer, I'm going to ask Dr. Warner if he'd go back with his wife. They've got curriculums if you're homeschool or Christian school or whatever or just grandma wants to teach children about creation. I believe he's got resources that can help you. Father, we thank you. We thank you that you are the creative God. God, we thank you that everything that has life was given by you. We thank you that you have given us opportunities to have relationship with you, but not only have a relationship with you, but to grow in you. So, Father, tonight I pray that you would bless everyone and every home that's represented here. God, I pray that you would have your hands upon them. God, I pray that you would reveal to them truth. Because, God, we know that it's truth that will set us free. Lord, we love you, and we praise you in Jesus' name. Amen. Visit Dr. Warner. God bless you. Good night.